Välkommen till fortsättningen av Folket som överlevde. Ända sedan vi gick i mål med våra 27 årtal är för snart 2 år sedan så har jag gått och burit på tanken om det är så att man skulle fortsätta och följa upp med lite mer aktuella samtal om vad som händer idag. De sista åren har jag fått lära känna många spännande personer som jag tänkte att det vore så spännande att få prata med dem för att ge olika perspektiv om nuläget. Så för att kunna använda liksom en lite populär term så kan man väl kalla det här för en sequel till Folket som överlevde, där jag kommer försöka belysa olika perspektiv om nuläget, om Israel idag, om judars situation idag, från olika röster som jag tror att du har nytta av att lyssna till. Så det här är ett pilotavsnitt kan man säga med Bassem Adranly, en palestinsk pastor som jag lärt känna lite grann, som jag tycker har ett helt unikt perspektiv och berättelse som jag tror behöver höras. Gillar du det här så låt mig veta. Hör gärna av dig på hej@simonhost.se om du tycker vi ska fortsätta med fler såna här samtal. Och här har du helt enkelt det första sequelen med Bassem Adranly. Most welcome, Bassem Adranly, to the podcast, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much, Simon, for inviting me, and I would love to share my story with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that really much. And I know you have a busy schedule. We've been rescheduling a couple of times, mostly because of me. But now we are finally here, and you are live from Jerusalem, and I'm live here from Skövde. I'm not going to ask you to pronounce it. It's you have this strange word.
It's easy. Skövde.
Skövde, yeah, that's good. That's good. You can move to Sweden anytime, so that's perfect. We met in November with your wife Jesra and also Hans-Erik Bylund, a pastor from Botkyrka here in Sweden. And we had the opportunity to have dinner with you and your wife, and that was the first time for me to meet with you in person. And I've heard a lot of good things about you before that, but so I was really blessed to finally have the chance to meet you, and really felt like there was a lot of things that I heard from you that I would like to share with a wider audience. So thank you for this opportunity. And I just love to hear, your life story. How did you come to faith in Christ?
Well, I was born in Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, in 1966. And in early 95, I started to dream about Christ. First, my background is Greek Orthodox Christian. But I was like an atheist, late 70s. We got attracted with communism back then, and early 80s. I was in the Communist Party, and I became atheist. So jumped to 95, started dreaming about Christ. One night I dreamt about Christ. It was a Sunday, and 2 Sundays, like 2 weeks on a roll. Every night I would dream about Christ. The same dream, that he's walking in Jerusalem and all over Samaria and Judea, and I was walking with him and his disciples. I couldn't tell from the faces of his disciples, but I was walking with him, and I was hearing him preaching, and sometimes we were like sitting somewhere on the clouds, and a lot of the people under us will be like 30 meters down, see them. And after 2 weeks, he became so real. It's like the feeling that is more real than anything physical around me. So I was insisting that the Lord will answer me on certain question, but he didn't. So, but he became so real in my life. So I gave my life to the Lord in February 27th of 95. And since then, I've been 4 months later, I started a ministry, a Hot Christian Line. I had to study the Bible in 4 months. So I was studying like from 10 to 12 hours a day to be able to answer people. And of course, most of those that were calling were Muslims. And since then, I was like exposed to more deeply. I grew up with Muslims. Our society is like 99% Muslims in the Arab side of Jerusalem. But I got exposed to that from early on in my life, and started studying about Islam and how to have dialogue with Muslims. At the same time, I was going to a Messianic congregation. So this mixture of ministry to Muslims and have connections with the Messianic Jewish believers, that was like a very blessing for me, because it opened my heart to both, actually. And that's how I started. And of course, came across a lot of struggles, all the years of my faith in this whole issue of Palestinian-Israeli struggle, conflict. And the Lord has been teaching me a lot about healing for, political wounds, I call it, or what are God's answers to all of these conflict. And with time, I released a whole course about what I call the political teachings of the Bible, which has been really, really a healer to many in the Arab world that are experiencing political instability and stuff like that. And presently I'm ordained pastor. We pastor a church in the West Bank, which is Samaria. And yeah, I still live in Jerusalem.
There's so much to drill down on here, but I was just curious that hotline, where did that idea come from? Was that like a phone line back in those days?
Yes. It came as a dream. And by the way, I don't dream.
Yeah.
Seriously, like once or twice a year, I remember a dream.
But now you dreamt all the time for a few weeks. Then.
Yeah, and 1 month later, I saw a dream, and I saw a magazine that we have, which is full of witchcraft, by the way. And I heard a voice: "I want you to start a hot Christian line and put an advertisement in this magazine, and put the verse from Matthew 11, if come to me, all you heavy loaded and burdened, I will give you rest." So I started preparing myself for 3 months, and then I started it. I was like very new believer back then.
Amazing. And what was the response that you got from the people calling?
Many of them were really in depression and didn't know how to deal with that. The Lord helped me, and many of them just wanted to argue, because it's clearly a Christian thing. So many Muslims called, and daily I was like from 10 to 12 at night, 2 hours on this line. And when I didn't have calls, I was calling public phones all around Jerusalem. You know, back then you have the public phone, and there is a phone number on that phone and things like that.
Oh.
And then it got developed. It became like a communication center for Life Agape. They adopted that ministry. And,
amazing. And you've been going. Have you returned to like? Has ministry been part of your life ever since?
yes, of course.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I was curious there. What would you say be the difference? Because you spoke about your background as an Orthodox Christian, and I guess that would be like a nominal faith that many people can adhere to, even here in Sweden. We just had this poll coming out that 43% of Swedes, they self-identify as Christians, and out of those 43%, like almost around 50% doesn't believe there is a God. so you gotta ask yourself, okay, so what does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean that you call yourself a Christian? But what would you say was the difference? Did you call yourself a believer before, or what was the difference? Would you say?
I would say like my background is Christian, but I would say I'm an atheist. But when I studied, my studies was science studies. I did 2 degrees in optometry. So I started thinking, you know what? I think there is God. It can't be that every culture has something about worship. Where does this desire comes from? It's in our instinct. So there is a God. Scientifically, we don't know what it is, but eventually we'll understand it. This is how it begins. Then I started researching many religions and stuff. I wasn't looking in the Bible at all. I thought that I grew up in that. I want to explore other religions. And I started actually exploring Islam, found it so much against logic in every way. But I also studied a little bit of Buddhism and many mythology, Greek mythology. Our ancestors, we are originally Greeks. So, but God visited me. Christ found me. I didn't look for him because I was really looking from my heart, and praise the Lord.
Yeah, amen. And somewhere along the line, you met your wife, Jezra.
Mm-hmm.
She's the daughter of American missionaries, right?
Yes,
and she's also grown up in Jerusalem, not maybe in the old town, but how did you come to meet her?
Well, the first couple of years I was attending a Messianic congregation, and then I started going to a church that is near my house in the old city. It's the Alliance Church, and I met her in 97, and then we got engaged in 98. We got married in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Still married, have two wonderful daughters.
One who got married pretty recently, right?
One of them got married like 1 month plus ago.
Amazing. And you told me, like, you started out, like, immediately you felt like, I'm going to start a physical hotline for people to call and ask things about faith. And I mean, that's quite a bold thing to do when you've been a Christian for a few months, but I can see that you're in some ways doing the same things now. You were sharing, and I would love to hear some more about your ministry today, both in the West Bank, Samaria, and also you have a big online ministry today, reaching out throughout the Middle East.
It continued with time, and then I was researching all these questions, biblical and also political. So of course I also studied theology and Christian apologetics. And with time, I developed one of the biggest platforms of Bible apologetics in the Arab world. My writings, it includes so far about 750 responses to Bible critiques.
Wow.
And this is, but many of them have more than one, like the resurrection. A passage has 12 objections, the same passage and stuff like that. Also articles and courses. We have the political teachings of the Bible as a course, like 25 1-hour videos with materials.
Amazing.
And it's a life transforming, and also many articles in that subject, political teachings of the Bible. That is a relief and gives you healing for all of those, because the Bible, the pulpit doesn't address these issues. So we have here a gap of really not understanding what's going on, how do we understanding in light of God's vision. So yeah, and of course we have also many believers in Samaria, not from Christian background, and we pray that it will develop to a point where the church will be out in the light and will break all the bondages of the society. We live in a very oppressive society for believers that are not Christian. So that's we're doing.
But what through your online ministry, also you are reaching many parts. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing about speaking Arabic. You can reach so many people. Sitting in Jerusalem, streaming online and creating this content, writing these articles. You can basically reach, hundreds of millions of people in over 20 countries. And what are you seeing? And has there been a change? I mean, this region for many I guess you could say centuries, but at least if you just look at the last 100 years, it's been so much conflict, turmoil, both domestic wars and also conflicts between countries, and of course the last few years, and now we have the war in Iran. Would you say that the surge for faith, the interest, is that shifting? Is that increasing? Is it the same as always, or what are you seeing right now?
Well, what I see is God is shaking all the world, actually. When the war in Gaza started, I said that this is nothing less than a third world war in the spirit, in the atmosphere of all the earth. And I saw this in many ways, like, how come, in the West, all these protests? Ask myself why. Yes, it's painful for me. 3 of my relatives died in Gaza. A second cousin, his wife and granddaughter, when part of the church collapsed from the bombing around.
And for those not knowing, most of the believers in Gaza, they were around 1,000 at the start of the war. They met and gathered in 2 churches, mainly in Gaza City, for refuge.
And there is a little community of
safekeeping.
women and some nuns also convent, but very small. So all the world was protesting until now. And I thought, this is strange. From 600,000 to 800,000 people died in the last 15 years in Syria. 470,000 died in Yemen. Nothing. Why? And we need to ask why. We cannot just follow the world. Satan is the ruler of this world. He makes the stories. He makes the narrative. He let you watch what he wants you to watch. He let you follow what he wants you to follow. We cannot, as a church, just go around, behind the crowds, like Christophe Dabon, when he wrote about that phenomenon in society. We have to examine. So I started examining things.
Sorry, Bassem. I think you are maybe touching the microphone or something. Because I'm getting some sounds from the desk or something. So I don't. Sorry for interrupting, but I
Sure.
just wanted to say. So I'll just make a short clap and please maybe go back a few sentences and continue. Sorry.
Okay. So I saw during the Gaza war a very strange phenomenon that all the world is protesting, and I said to myself, why? Do they love the Palestinians that much? And I thought, no, this is not love. This is something that I taught about in my course, the justice of hate. There are justice, biblical justice, and there are justice also in the world, in the definition of the world, which our Bible say about this is as injustice. Like if you look at, I think, First and Corinthians 6, when Paul says, how can believers who has cases against each other that go and get sued in the unjust, he's talking about the courts of the world. He's calling them unjust. So anyway, and justice of hate, is it because they hate the Jews? This is what I think. But why? Why all this great turmoil all around the world? I have to ask questions. And how Muslims unite together with far left, with transgender, with homosexuals, and also with Satan worshippers, all as one marching together. So I saw in this as if the ruler of this world, Satan, is like declaring an emergency mode all around the world. So I understood. I'm very logical, spiritual, but also logical. I understood. I felt that God is shaking something and hitting something that is really, and for some reason, the dark side of this world is losing control. And of course, we know that anti-Semitism is deeply rooted in the Bible, because God promised that the seed of Israel will not stop being a nation before him. And after talking about the New Testament, the New Covenant in Jeremiah 31. So God promised, and it looks like throughout the ages, and it's historically proven, the Jews are the longest persecuted group of people around history. Many got persecuted, many were slaughtered. But I mean, as a period of time, that it was the longest persecuted group of people. So I thought to myself, no, there is here something that we need to really try to read. Because the most basic foundation of the Bible is that without vision, people will go astray.
Yeah.
And of course, in this our modern world, when we say this word, we think of a vision like a plan. No, 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 no. Without seeing what God is seeing, we will be lost. Our congregation will hear something from this one, and he will adopt some certain ideology, hear something else from someone else. So the people will be lost. Why? Us as a church, there is two branches for the work of the church. The second branch is to transfer God's vision, how God sees things in our world. It doesn't mean that the reading will be true. We are human beings. But I mean to teach people to always think of that. I see this thing as A. How God sees this. I mean, all the Bible is about that, about imparting God's vision in my life. Try to see things in his vision, in the way he sees things. Of course, in that context, when this verse was said, it's about the prophets that transfer God's vision to the people. But in our day, is the church has to read things differently in our world, and to share that reading to our congregation, to understand and not to be swept away from all the streams that the world has. And all of these are anti-God, anti-Christ.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Bassem. And I thought maybe we could rewind a little bit, because you just shared before that you were born in 1966 in the old city, and at that time it was under Jordanian rule since 48, and then just in 67 it was. In the 6-Day War, it became under Israeli control, even though they let the Jordanians keep the Temple Mount in control.
Yes.
So you have a Palestinian like that. That's your heritage, and that's the way you grew up. And I would just like to hear your thoughts about the Palestinian identity, like the roots, and maybe some background to this historical context, which you really grew up in the middle of, that we hear so much about, and it can be confusing sometimes. So would you just like to explain that a little bit, where this how was growing up like that, and also this Palestinian identity?
Well, yes, I was born as a Jordanian, actually.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I had Jordanian birth certificate. And then when Israel took over in 67, then we got an Israeli certificate. But East Jerusalemites are with no defined citizenship. So our citizenship is not defined. So we used to fill out, when you fill Jordanian. But with time, I discovered that I'm not Jordanian, because once on the borders of Canada, I felt Jordanian. Because I mean, Israel gives us a travel document. In the travel document, they write Jordanian about the East Jerusalemites. Now, West Bank is no Palestinians officially. They have It's a passport, but it's more like a travel document, Palestinian travel document. And they are Palestinians, but East Jerusalemites, they don't know what they are. So they detain me on the borders for 3-4 hours. And then the officer came and says, you confused us. You shouldn't write Jordanian here. I said, what shall I write? You should write undefined under the... So on the age of 38, I discovered what I am with an undefined citizenship. When 10 years ago, I got Israeli citizenship. But I mean, many East Jerusalemites have undefined citizenship. But, you know, the Palestinian identity as a nation in itself is a big dilemma. Because as we know, historically, it doesn't exist as a nation. Now, I'm not saying that the people that has been living for hundreds of years don't have right to the land. Talking a Palestinian nation, yes, the Brits created that name.
1917. Yeah.
But it started to appear actually in 1870 with the first immigration of the Jews to the land during the Ottoman Empire. And it included the Holy Land, let's call it, and Jordan together. Palestine was the Holy Land and Jordan together. And then they made a country called Transjordan. And that part of the world, nobody knew what are the Arab side of this, because the Arabs back then were using the term Palestinian because, I mean, the Brits were using it, but they did not adopt it yet until like mid-50s. So, yes, it is a dilemma. But of course, the people have the right to the land because they have been living here for ages. And the Jews have the right to the land. I mean, one of the biggest errors, many of the Palestinian Christian reading of the history, it's full of lies and errors. They describe Israel as a colonizer. That's a huge error. It's simply not true. It's a lie. The Jews are, you cannot consider the Jews as colonizers because colonization has a definition. It's when a country or a nation come and control other countries, not necessarily with military, sometimes with, investments and stuff. And with time, they control the country. But the Jews are not a nation in like the political science definition because they came from many nations. They have the same religion, but they are not one nation. Secondly, they are not a country. So what are they? They are immigrants. They came as legal immigrants, like Muslims in Europe. Yes, and they have full right to the land. They came as legal immigrants. They started to flood the land more in after mid-30s because of the Holocaust and the Second World War, preparation for the war. But then they came as refugees, but they were coming to the land as immigrants. Yes, they have the rights. They came as legal immigrants. And it's not colonization. It's something else, but it's not colonization. So many of these definitions, and even historians use, it's not true. We have to re-examine everything. In my curriculum, of one of the things that are on my heart is to contextualize the church, to be more welcoming to Muslim background believers. And one of the areas, the 10 areas of contextualization and re-educating people is history. Yes, they need to restudy history and to start building things on the right facts, not on the narrative that the ruler of the world wants to promote.
When you are saying the things that you are saying now, you would definitely upset a lot of people, because the narrative we're hearing now from politicians in parliaments, in universities, and in many newspapers all around the West and probably all around the world is that Israelis came and stole Palestine from the Palestinians. And that started already in 1948. And you are saying now that the Arabs didn't pick up this Palestinian identity until the mid-50s. But yeah, and how do you what do you think it where does it come from that we have these completely different narratives, even though I mean history, of course we can look at history from different perspectives, but there can only be one history, right? We can't rewrite history and make it fit our narrative. But how do you think that that is, that we have these completely different stories and that the West has in very many ways adopted the narrative of Israel as colonizers and the Palestinian identity as the real indigenous identity?
Listen, I will say it again. I'm talking about the title, the name Palestinians. I'm not saying that they are not indigenous and they don't have right to the land. And I'm telling you a fact.
That's an important thing. But I mean, that would be more the Arabs who have been living there for centuries and even millennia.
If you look at the division plan, 1948 181 resolution by the UN Council back then. It's not the UN exactly
General
as we know
Assembly.
it today.
Yeah.
They did this resolution. They said a Jewish state and an Arab state. They didn't even know what it would be called, because the title Palestine was imposed on the Arabs. They did use it, but it was imposed. And it started to appear after 1870 again. And by the way, throughout the history, most of those all of those historians that use the word Palestine were Christians. As occasionally you would see also Muslim historians quoting them and using the term, but the Muslims specifically, they never use it. So I'm talking about the title, but for me, I don't care. We have a rule, Ephesians 3 verse 15, that by Christ, every tribe in heaven and on earth was named. One of the videos I'm talking about the political teachings of the Bible is about names of nations. Yes, sometimes God chooses to change the names of nations. We see it in the Bible and we see it in our modern world. Okay? You didn't have Saudis 100 years ago. When the Brits gave it to Al Saud, the rulers now today, it was changed to Saudi Arabia. Kuwait didn't exist. The Emirates didn't exist as it is now. So with time, many nations, Jordan didn't exist. Therefore, there was no Jordanians. So names are given by Christ. That's what the New Testament says. Sometimes he used to redeem the names. Yes, Palestine in Hebrew have a negative connotations. Those who invade, those who steal. So God can change the name and God can redeem the name. I have no problem with the name. The contrary. If it still exists, I believe God wants to redeem it. Many people have said, oh, it's like a demonic name. No, I don't agree with that. And have a whole lecture about names in the Bible of nations. And also in the Old Testament, we see that this place was called this before, and now it's not. So, yes, I believe, of course, the rights to the Palestinian for the Palestinian in the land, but what we saw in the protests around the world is like trying to wipe Israel off the map. And this is what the Brits saw, by the way. The British mandate saw two things. In the Peel Commission, 1936, when almost a civil war started between the Arabs and the Jews, they sent a commission to study the matter. And they came up with a solution, a report to the Majesty.
The Peel Commission,
Peel Commission. And the result was, listen, these nations will never live together. Okay? Give 18% of the land to the Jews and the rest to the Arabs, and you resolve the problem. Okay. In the beginning, the Jews rejected that. Then they accepted it with one condition, to empty it from the Arabs. But the Arabs refused that. 18%. Imagine. The Arabs refused that. This is the first plan, actually.
Yeah, so the Arabs would get 82% and the Jews would get the Peel
not exactly.
plan.
The Arabs will get around 70%.
Yeah,
because
and this will be under like international control or something.
Yeah, they suggested to have the International Republic of Jerusalem, which extends from Jerusalem to Jaffa coast, which is like the official port of Jerusalem as an international city, whatever. So that was a conflict. And by the way, during the time of the Turks, the Jews bought 420 square kilometers in the land. And they were most of them are the lands that they bought. So, and the Arabs rejected it. And of course, after when the British says that there is no solution there, they made the 10-year plan, white letter, what to call it, from 37 to 47 that they will leave. So they left, and on 1937, I brought you here something by Ernest Bevin. You can see this. I can share it from the British Parliament website. This is his speech in 18th of February 1947. Basically saying the problem is this: the Jews want to make a country, and the Arabs want to prevent them of making country. He didn't say the Arabs want to make a country. The vision of the Arabs wants to prevent them of making country. The Gaza war, the bottom line, this is what we saw. That, all the world agrees on this, whether they know it or not. From the river to the sea, you want to wipe out Israel from the map, And I am against this. And I want also the Palestinians to live in their country and have their full rights as citizens, and they have peaceful life, prosperity. Of course, I want my people to also live. But how?
Yeah, yeah, how? That's the question they asked in 1937 at the Peel Commission, and I guess we're still asking today. But I think that's a really good way of really centering it down, that the Jews, they wanted to create the country and the Arabs wanted to prevent it. And I mean, that's probably at the heart of the conflict even to this day. And there was so many things that you said there that I would like to drill down on, and we won't have time to go through everything today. I just want to say one thing, that a thing that you said, like the Jews, I mean, most of the Jews came as immigrants, especially starting from the late 19th century. But already then, but one thing that we forget is that also it came a lot of Arab immigrants in that area up till 48, because not the least, the Jewish settlers, they created a lot of job opportunities. And you can see how the Jewish cities, their Arab population grew extensively more during up till 1948 than the mostly Arab cities. So that's one thing that we forget. And of course, we have the Mizrahi Jews, the Eastern Jews, who has been there all the time, just like the Arabs. And I mean, we see it on the day of Pentecost when Peter is preaching. They start to speak. There are Arabs there. So, I mean, both the Arabs and the Jews has really been in this land and in this region all the way back to the time of the Bible. So, yeah. But there's a lot more to say, but you explained that. I mean, if we look back to, you mentioned 37 with the Peel Commission, we have the UN partition plan in 1947, which the Jews accept and the Arabs reject, and then we can go on till the war 67, just after you were born, when the Jews were open to negotiate of dealing with the land they had conquered and return some land in trade for peace. But the Arabs once again said no. And then it was interesting that, no to negotiation. Maybe you want to nuance some of that. But
now,
I wanted to, sure.
If I go
jump
before
in.
67,
Yeah.
That was a golden time to make the deal.
Yeah.
And that's a very pivotal time for us to restudy. This is the most important period of time between 48 and 67. And I think also it's full of historical distortions and not right. When the Arabs lost the war, there was a division among the Arabs and the Palestinians. I may put it in 3 sects. Okay. First, the Arabs, which is they call it the Arab Rescue Army, جيش الإنقاذ العربي, which included 6 countries to help. That's in 1948 war, to help the Palestinians. And then when they lost the war, the Arabs changed their view and started to try to, convince the Palestinians to accept the 181 resolution. Okay.
So basically accepting kind of the borders that were at the
yes,
at the
it
scene,
was almost
49.
50%. They gave a little bit more to the Jews, but it was like the Negev and people land
the desert area.
Yeah, it's about 50%. So, and they had a golden opportunity, and the Jews wanted also to make the deal. Why? Because they were holding the Jews from their throat. What do I mean by that? They control the whole city and the Temple Mount. What is the use of having all the country without the most holy place for them? So anyway, they made the conference in Gaza in September 1948. And in that conference, the conflicts start to appear between like 3 trends. The Palestinian, the Arabs, the Arab, especially the 6 countries surrounding Israel, plus Iraq, plus Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Jordan and Saudi Arabia also
Egypt.
had some troops, and also Egypt. So they told them, please accept the resolution of 181. And the Palestinians were rejecting. Now the third trend was King Abdullah, King of Jordan. Because as we know, from 1948 to 67, the Jordanians were ruling the West Bank, and the Egyptians were ruling Gaza. So why they didn't give a Palestinian free state back then?
Exactly.
And the King Abdullah I was trying to convince them, why another country? Unite with Jordan in one country. Why you want to make another separate country? And that was my father's stand, by the way. I didn't understand him at all. He never believed in a Palestinian state. Never. He's an old man. He was born in 1914. So in 1948, he was like 34 years old.
Yeah, my
very
age.
highly intellectual.
Yeah.
So that's the third trend. So you have King Abdullah trying to urge the Palestinians to join together with Jordan in one state. So he didn't believe in a Palestinian state, not in the sense of he didn't believe of our rights to the land, but why another country? Okay, the UN said Arab country, but why you have to follow what they say? Unite together with Jordan. And the Arabs were saying, please accept 181 resolution. And the Palestinians, which back then, Amin al-Husseini, which was the mufti, but was like running from country to country because the Brits was following him. He was a friend of Hitler.
Like an Islam agitator who was a friend of Hitler, just for context. And he was really like inflaming the conflict.
Exactly. That guy with Abdul Qadir al-Husseini rejected totally to give any inch of the land to the Jews. Nothing. From the river to the sea, nothing. That theme came from Gaza, by the way, in September 1948. And the army that they started, the Palestinians, the first army, what was it called? You will not find it in English because it's not translated right to the English language. They call it in English the Holy Rescue Army. In Arabic, the Holy Jihad Army. The Holy Jihad Army. So actually, the political Islam or the Islamists, because he also had if he wasn't Muslim Brotherhood, he had such great bonds with Muslim Brotherhood from Egypt because he lived also in Egypt.
Hassan al-Banna who started
Hassan
in
al-Banna,
the
yes,
20s,
in 1928. So this is the reason for the destruction of the Palestinian people. Political Islam. That's the reality, what we saw. And, with all the controversy in the narratives, as you shared before, you come up to a point where you want to hit your head with hammers. You don't know what really happened. Because every narrative you want to create, you will have support for it from the academic world. It's the most confusing and conflicting historical 100 years. So I said to myself, I want to look up in primary sources. So I find 3 main primary sources. One is
For your studies?
Yes.
Yeah.
One from Bahjat Abu Gharbiye, which was an officer in the Holy Jihad Army. He was an officer. Talking before he died with it was an interview with the Al Jazeera, like in 2002. I got it and I kept it because I know that at some point they will wipe it off the internet. And he's talking about this conflict. He's saying because Jaysh Jihad al-Muqaddas was against any Jewish entity in the land, and the Arabs were trying to convince them to accept the 181 resolution. He's talking about this. Also, recently, Al Arabiya channel published a phone call between Jamal Abdel Nasser and the king of Mauritania, I forgot his name, also talking about this, that they pulled them to a war in 97. They didn't want to do. And also the king of Tunisia, Al Habib Bourguiba, which died like 10 years ago, he had a speech in Jericho in 1965 urging the Palestinians to accept the resolution. And he says, you are destroying the nation like this. He was like trying to address it like in a nice way, like you shouldn't be pursuing either all or nothing. Just accept us, start your lives and see what happens. And this was sharing their experience in Tunisia, that the French gave them a little bit. They accepted it and they kept negotiations with them and so on and so forth. So that's what happened. And actually, with Hamas destroying Gaza like this, it's not the first time. The whole disaster of the Palestinian people was the first time. And they led the Palestinians to hell, really. But of course, that doesn't we'll talk more about Israel. It doesn't make Israel innocent. But I mean, I'm sharing from our part what are the mistakes we did. And actually, we are repeating these mistakes, like Gaza was the last one.
I think it was so interesting because you were born in 1966, and that's just as a Jordanian, and just 1 year before the 6-Day War, and when everything changed, where the solutions you were mentioning now were not as plausible, or at least they will take more to make them happen. And then you became Christian, you got saved in 95, and that's actually right in the time of the Oslo Agreement, which was signed in 93, but it took some time for it to be implemented. And that's a time where like the peace movement had gained ground, and probably like the first time when the Palestinian side actually agreed to an agreement, and Yasser Arafat, he signed the deal outside the White House together with the Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. And I'd just like to hear, because then you were in your 30s, so how would you describe like the climate back then, and maybe compared to the climate today when it comes to peace movement, and what were the feeling when these things happened in the mid-90s, and if you could compare it to the situation that you are experiencing today?
Well, fanaticism grew so rapidly and so harshly between two sides. The Hamas and Jihad Islami from the Palestinian side, and settlers in the West Bank, and Jewish extreme views also from the Jewish side. So the atmosphere is terrible now way more terrible than before. It's hard. Sometimes you ask yourself, is there a solution to begin with?
Would you say that in the mid-90s, back then, were you feeling like, yes, maybe this is actually the time, maybe this is actually happening?
Yeah, but let me be fair here. The problem back then, which is still the problem today, if we understand it and we try to work with it, we could pursue the two-state solution. The problem back then is that whatever many people have in their minds, all of those that are talking about two-state solution, they are speaking sincerely. But they really don't understand that even if they are sincere, not all the Palestinians thinks that. So you will still have many movements and militias that will fight any solution. That's what happened from the Israelis, by the way. The first attack was Baruch Goldstein in 95 when he entered the
Hebron,
Abraham's
tomb,
mosque,
there, Machpelah. The
Marata
mosque there
Machpelah, and he killed about 28 and injured close to 100. And then, Hamas and Jihad Islami started to make operations, so they both destroyed. But the other problem that happened that we need to learn from, the Arabs are dictatorial, they have the dictatorial mindset, which means that we can do as politicians whatever we want, and we let the nation go in the same direction, doesn't matter. They don't have this sensation, if I go to peace, I have to re-educate my people about peace. No, the teaching and the curriculums are full of hate to the Jews. And the politicians it's like the same way with Egypt and Jordan, that the political leadership make peace with Israel, but all the hate teaching continues. This understanding that the leader has to mobilize all the nation towards certain direction that would move them from point A to point B, it's not existing. You know who did this? The Emirates. The Emirates said, if we go with peace with Israel, we have to re-educate our people about peace. And then they started doing many reformation of how they preach in the mosque, what they learn at school, their media, and all of that stuff. You have to move people from point A to point B. This didn't happen.
You're talking about the United Arab Emirates,
yes.
Which,
And that's what they said. You need to, whatever, rules Gaza, he need to re-educate the people. It's not enough just to have rulers that have relations with Israel. It doesn't work.
And that's just what happened in Germany after World War II.
Sure.
They had to radicalize the whole mind of the entire people, because they had for a couple of decades just been feeded with this Nazi ideology.
Exactly.
And but one thing I mentioned to you when I met you is that I was really relieved to meet you and to hear you describe the situation the way you do, with such wisdom and knowledge, and not trying to just do this blame game that I can hear from a lot of other Palestinian voices. And of course, we need the same kind of Israeli voices who can point to their errors and to their mistakes and their part of this conflict. But now you are speaking from your position and from your perspective. And a lot of the other voices that are coming out from some Palestinian Christian leaders are actually quite different from you, and we have this thing that called the Kairos movement, which has gathered a lot of different Palestinian Christian leaders, and they have written a couple of resolutions, and a new one came out just this fall. It was actually, I think they met for the conference just a week before we met, and also during the war they made these public statements from Palestinian Christians, and they petitions, and they asked for believers around the world to sign the petitions. And what I would like to come to is that when I hear those voices, I can feel in many ways that they have adopted this I would say false is a strong word, but I'm going to use that, this false narrative of the history, and they are putting like all of the blame on the Israeli side. And even just a couple of weeks into the war in Gaza, they already were kind of excusing the Hamas attack. They came out with this, and they were parroting a lot of the lies, especially there was this attack on the Al Arabiya hospital, I think the name, early on.
Ahli.
And yeah, Al Ali,
Al-Ahli.
yeah, hospital, Al Ali, yeah, and it was so much evidence showing that the rocket which damaged the hospital and killed a lot of people was actually coming from failed Islamic jihadi rockets and not from the Israelis. But they still have that in their statement, which can still be signed online, and they are also using these words like genocide. They are putting the blame on the occupiers, on the and they can use these words like colonizers, which you do not prefer to use about the Jews and the Israelis. I know this can be sensible for you because, I mean, you know these people, you live among them. And what's your thoughts on this Kairos movement and many of the voices coming out from quite many Palestinian Christian leaders?
Well, I feel it's really, it's disgraceful in many ways. And it's not helping in any way. It's only helping the Islamic Brotherhood narrative, not even echoing the voice of the Arabs. Because the reading is that has a lot of elements into it. When this liberation theology entered our land, like by an Anglican pastor in late 80s, they adopted it from South America. And the context is so much different in South America. And it was about a reformation of the church, because the church was silent about what's going on in the injustices. But you're talking about 98% of Christian society. You share the same language. The fathers and the pastors were the fathers of the politicians. It's a different context. It's not a land with 1% Christians. So what happened with time, that the Christian message got diluted so much because the language doesn't speak to anyone. I mean, you have the Jews and you have 99% Muslims. What are you talking about? So most of their message is pointed towards the West. The reading is that they are the white supremacist, white colonizers, which is Jews, and that the Brits are the ones that let them take Palestine. And it's false. You know, most of the foundations of the State of Israel was founded during the Ottoman Empire. But again, they don't look at the Ottomans, which ruled us, which colonized us sincerely.
400 years. Yeah.
400 years colonized us. Oh, the British colonized us. No, the British, it wasn't colonization. It wasn't. Especially here, you know. And the Brits dealt with the land so cautiously. You know, I have so much things to say about this, but I know so I mean, this is from the other side. And then the reading of the word justice. I have 5 series of articles about 14 fallacies that they adopt about justice, the whole theme of justice. 14 fallacies, and including the reading to history. So they don't consider the Ottomans colonizers. They consider the Brits are like the great Satan, as Islamists read it. They are the ones, and they even promote worse than that. That it's because of Christians, the restorationists in Britain, that we believe that the Jews should come to the land, which carry many propositions that are not right. They are proposing that Zionism was the reason that the State of Israel started, and that's not right. They were the Jewish conservative nationalists. They are the ones that established Israel. You know, cities like Tel Aviv, Petach Tikva, Nes Tziyona, Herzliya, most of them were built before even the birth of the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement was a parallel plan to push away the religious vision, to go like in a nationalistic, atheistic, or social way, and it was refused in the beginning by the nationalists, conservative nationalists. So many things that are not right, and so I talked about just one statement, 3 lines, a whole article. How many errors was in these 3 lines? About 5 main errors.
in one of the statements put out by the Palestinian leaders.
Just 3 lines of the statement. It's terrible, and it's injecting in the Palestinian Christian society this self-pity feeling and mentality, and I believe that they are one of the main reasons why Christians are leaving the country. Because if you read that statements, you think, well, we don't have a place here.
Yeah, and one thing that I was thinking about when I'm reading all of these statements, I'm not going to say all of them, but especially the ones put out during the war as petitions for people to sign, I'm feeling like I don't think Hamas has anything to disagree with in these statements.
Of course not.
And I think that's one thing to think about. Would you just comment, because this talk about and we are coming to a close, so we're not going to go on forever, but just this talk about genocide, which has been parroted so many times, and it's like almost, and Amnesty and others, they have said this is genocide, and it's been repeated so many times, and also by the Palestinian Christian leaders, that it is almost taken for granted. That's like a fact today. Would just comment on that kind of language and what you are seeing. And as you said, you have lost your own relatives in Gaza, so this affects you directly. So if anyone would have the incentive to talk about genocide, it would be you, because you've lost your own relatives. But what's your thoughts on that kind of language?
Well, first of all,
ethnic cleansing and so forth.
First of all, it's a disgrace for Christ just to call it as genocide. Why? The definition of genocide is a deliberate murder of masses of ethnic group or people. A deliberate. Now, how can you judge the hearts or what's going in the mind of the Israeli government? How can you judge what's in their heart? I mean, it goes against Christ. This is judgment here. You are judging not their work, you are judging their motives, and it's totally refused. And they already said it 2 weeks throughout the war, but also they said it in previous wars with Gaza. So this is not the first time, this is a charge that is ready. That's the first thing. I pleaded for them. I sent letters for them. Please don't use that word. I have no problem to call it crimes, because when you say crimes, you're talking about the happening, the event. You're not talking about the motives behind it. You see the difference between calling it a genocide and... Secondly, logically doesn't add up. Hamas, according Musa Abu Marzouk, one of their leaders, 1,500 fighter entered in October 7th. They killed 1,200 people. Let's make it easier for maths. And many says, no, it was killed by the Israeli fighters. Let's say 1,000. During a period of time, 6 hours. And let's say that all the aircraft that by the end of the year 2023, Israel struck Gaza 30,000 airstrikes. 30,000. Remember this. In one of the most dense populated area on earth. 30,000. This is 2 months throughout the war. Let's forget about this. Let's say that the 40 to 90,000 troops in Gaza with tanks all have the killing power of this 1,500 Hamas fighters, which they committed genocide, by the way. And let's do the addition. 2 years. 2 years. And let's assume they will kill the exact same number of people that these fighters, 1,500 Hamas fighters, killed in 6 hours each day. So you're talking here about 700,000 people. Now, first, how can 30,000 airstrikes to Gaza? Let's take this just after two months of the war, and forget about all the artillery and all the and do the calculations. You will come up with 2 people killed in each airstrike in the most dense areas on earth, 2 people dying, and about 4 got injured. This is genocide. I'm talking logic here. And of course, not 72,000 people died in Gaza. This is a lie, another lie. According to Palestinian statistics of natural deaths in Gaza, about 6,000 people die every year in Gaza, natural death. Of course, these were added to the Israeli bill. So we're talking about 60,000. That's why I tell you, 2 people dying and 4 got injured by each 1 airstrike. Considering that the rest is nothing, does this add up for you as a genocide?
No, it doesn't. And you can also take a recent example of the things going on in Iran when it comes out that the Iranian regime, the Islamic regime in Iran, probably killed somewhere around 30,000 people in just 2 days in January, and we don't see those kind of protests actually happening around that.
But also, let me say something before I forget at my age, But also we have to address the other extreme. In one of my articles, my teachings, how God looks at countries and governments. There is no holy God of governments. You have to understand that governments in our world have 2 categories, either under the judgment of God or either under the warning of God by verses. So the other Zionistic part, which try to push Israel in the justification box, this also doesn't work. Israel is part of the evil world that is all around us. It's just a country. They're not holy. They make mistakes. They're not they do a lot of errors and a lot of injustices. But we have to really be frank. Look at things the way they are. Not like when Israel does something, Israel persecute Christians. What? Maybe this is another subject. But let's look at the whole thing, like value the life of Sudanese that has, the war has still going on, like 7 months started before the October 7th. And until now, even no one knows how many people died. The last count by BBC in mid 2024 was 150,000. Until today, they say about 150,000.
In Sudan.
This nobody even knows.
No.
Nobody even cares.
Yeah.
No. Let's, as a church, look at the people that have the same value. Do you talk about apartheid? Why you look at the Palestinian life more than the Sudanese life? This is not racism.
When you speak like this, Bassem, I mean, do you lose a lot of friends? Are you open to speak this way? Would you say that you are presenting a view that is common among Palestinian believers, or what's it like for you to speak up this very frank way on these topics?
No, it's very hard, and many of the pastors in the land, they speak with me, they encourage me secretly. And when they want to raise something, they tell me to raise it. I don't understand.
So
I don't understand. But, I pray for all of them. I have good relationships with everyone, from my part, at least. And many of the Israeli side don't like what I say. And most of the maybe only Muslims don't like what I say, but I mean, many of the Christian side don't like what I say. But I mean, I'm saying what my conscience reads, and I learn every day, and have no problem to talk about these things. I don't like silencing people, and I like to share my opinion.
That's good. Yeah, I think we need the conversations for sure. And just finally here, when I was traveling around Israel, Palestinian territories, and meeting with spiritual leaders, among them you and Jesra, last November, after more than 2 years of war, I could sense, at least what I could sense was that a lot of the relationships between Israelis and Palestinians, between Palestinian believers and Jewish believers, Jews following Jesus, that it feels like it's really, yeah, it's been tough on these relations, and I mean it's natural for us to take the stand of our people, and in a conflict like this, you naturally see to those closest to you, to your family, to your friends, your relatives, to your city, and it can be hard to see the other side, especially during conflict. But I know that you have some, maybe you have another perspective on that, and that would be interesting to hear. But I also know that from your congregation, there's a lot of initiatives of bridge building between Jewish believers, Palestinian believers, and maybe you can speak into that as a final closing word here.
Yes, of course. I was involved in, prayers and meetings with Arabs and Israelis all my spiritual life, okay? But it was like more Arabs that lean towards accepting the messianic view of things, to be frank with you. But lately, throughout the Gaza war, something different happened. I was working with a group, also a part of a group, messianic believers from the Jewish side, that I was sharing my views. And we found out that they need preparations too, because they don't understand many things. So now we are doing initiative with actual Palestinians, Palestinian believers and Jewish believers. But both of them are listening to each other, listening to all the struggles they have with the evil, injustices of settlers in the West Bank and all of that. So God is really like iron with iron, using us to reshape each other. We need to listen to each other, and we need to learn with each other, because it's not like I want to teach him or teach me. Yes, God will use us, but this is not the right attitude. We want both to go towards the top of the mountain, which is Christ. It's more unity towards the head. It's not unity like in our ideas, because you may have two believers that have absolute identical theology but hate each other, and maybe two that don't have the same theology but love each other. So it's not about let's make a statement. Baloney. It's nothing. Doesn't make sense to God, and it's all, it's just following the world trends instead of like trying to apply what Christ did in putting the two together as one new man in Christ through the cross.
Yes. Yes, let's pray for that to happen, and that movement to increase, and also for this time of turmoil and war, which this country and region has seen so much of, that it will turn people towards Christ, both the Jewish, the Arabs, the Muslims, all of the people towards Christ, and that they will find the true hope in Him. And just so thankful, Bassem, for you taking the time and sharing your story and speaking so open and so frank. I really appreciate that. So I just want to, send the greetings to Jesra, and God bless you in your important work.
Thank you so much. And my greetings from Jerusalem to all the Swedes church all over Sweden.
Amen. Thank you.
Okay, take care.